So I want to thank the colony. Thank you all for coming out for the next 2 hours for a dramatic reading of my book. You should have seen the look on your face. You should have seen the look on my face. If that would have happened, I know what you in the back are going, yes, we got the best seats, we're out of here. In the front are going, how the heck are we going to do that? Well, thanks for that introduction. That's basically who I am. I think you have the right to know who's standing up here talking in front of you, so I'll go backwards and then forwards real quick. My wife Elisa and I live in Medford Lakes. I moved back to Medford Lakes 6 years ago with my wife. I grew up in Medford Lakes. That was bracketed between working at the Cathedral of the Woods with my dear friend Ginny Leopold. As the youth minister. Before that, I was a cop in Medford, retired after 25 years. I had to retire because I have a tumor in my spinal cord that's entangled and is inoperable, and because of that, I had to retire, and everything is pain management. Before that, I was a paramedic. Kevin and I were talking about the good old days in Camden. After growing up, being born and raised in Medford Lakes, which is where I was raised my entire life, 130 Hiawatha Trail. My mom was the borough clerk. My brother and I, we got to know the local police department at an early age. And I graduated from Shawnee High School, and I was suspended the first week of my freshman year, and things kind of went downhill from there, to the point that my parents were on first name basis with Keith Constantinos, the superintendent back then. And I didn't graduate in the top 50% of my class. I graduated in that half, which made the top 50% possible. So I was lucky enough to walk in graduation, and then became a paramedic. My wife and I both had trial marriages, have two wonderful boys from my first marriage who see Elisa as just a mom and everything else, so we are blessed. We moved back to Medford Lakes. Elisa taught at Shawnee High School. That's where we met. I was assigned there as a school resource officer. She grew up, was born and raised in North Jersey. I say North Jersey because there is no Central Jersey.
We fight Central Jersey.
And always wanted to live in. So being a teacher. Okay,
Oh, okay.
fine. But being a teacher at Shawnee, she always wanted to live in Medford Lakes. And after Elisa retired, we are now living our dream on Sitting Bull Trail. Like I said, we've been there for about the past 6 years. So that's a little bit about who I am and who's going to be talking to you for a little bit. What I thought, I know that the book club, you talked about the book and you had your discussion. I thought I would share with you a little bit, before I go into the book, about what I learned as a writer. This is the 10th book that I've written. However, it's the first novel that I've written. My 9 previous books were all nonfiction. Writing tens of thousands of police reports, who, what, when, where, why, how, you know, keep it to the minimum. You write nonfiction, that's kind of what you do. You give it to an editor and you say, make me look smart. The editor puts everything together and you have a book. I thought going into this that writing fiction wouldn't be that much different. Oh, how wrong I was. Let me tell you how the plot came about, because Ginny's here. Ginny visits us whenever she can. And one of the evenings, Ginny popped over. The conversation came up. I think Elisa had read something or saw something about privileged conversations with clergy. And so we were talking, Ginny and I were explaining to Elisa what we can share, what we can't share, what we can't even share with each other, depending on the circumstances and things like that. So Ginny, we packed up all the leftovers, said, Ginny, enjoy the rest of dinner. And after that, I like to watch educational TV. I'm a fan of educational shows. And perhaps you're familiar with that wonderful movie from about 20 years ago, There's Something About Mary. So after Ginny left, I popped on There's Something About Mary. And if you remember it, Mary had the older neighbor who would listen in on phone conversations with a police scanner. She would listen in on all her neighbors' phone conversations. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, Ginny and I were just talking about privileged conversation. This has to be a sign from God. I'm watching this movie. So that's how the idea, I wish I could make up something better, but that's as crazy as the idea of how this book came about, is from that. But from that, I was invited to give a book talk to a small book club yesterday, and they had asked me, what was your reason for this? Okay, that's the idea. What was the reason? And I'm going to share with you not what I know, but what I've learned, because I took a lot of courses in writing this. I was taking courses as I was writing. And one of the things I learned is that you have to have a non-negotiable. And that is one thing as an author, when you're writing nonfiction, that you will not negotiate with. One thing that whoever's reading it, even though they know it's fiction, they know where you stand on an issue. And my non-negotiable was, I'm tired of the patriarchal way that the world is going and the church is going, and the fact that women don't have a voice that I think they should. And if you've read the book, now you kind of get an understanding of why the female characters were so strong. And the protagonist would not have been able to do anything if not for those three women collectively and individually. So that was my non-negotiable. The thesis for the book was, and I don't know if I said this already, we were talking. I believe in being vulnerable, authentic, and transparent. So I'm going to be vulnerable, authentic, and transparent with you. Might get emotional because what I also learned in writing fiction, a lot of inner stuff comes out and things that weren't really resolved, and they came out in the book. I was raised in a very conservative household, so conservative that my dad pulled us out of the church we were going to because they dared to have a female deacon. And in a black and white world, there's either good or bad, right or wrong, righteous or evil. Then I became a cop. Well, you're taught in cop school that there is only good or bad. There's only scumbags and good guys. There's those people who are for you and against you. I personally believe policing has to change. We really have to look at how we're doing this. But you're taught that in street survival classes and things like that so that you go home at the end of the night. That's the whole idea of that. So I had an upbringing of black and white. There is no gray area in life. Ultra-conservative thinking, along with 25 years of there are either good or bad, righteous or evil, scumbags or those for you. There was a lot of deconstructing that took place after I retired. If any of you here know anything about law enforcement, cops don't sit at the table in a restaurant or a booth right in front of the door. We have to go all the way to the very back. You have to sit with your back to the wall so you're facing the wall. And when Lisa and I first got married, she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I have to sit all the way back here because what if you're retired?" But it becomes second nature in you. And so there was a lot of things I had to unlearn just as a person so that I would even have a chance to do this. So, told you all that to tell you this. Elisa's saying you need to write a novel. Ginny's saying you should need to write a novel. We're part of a writers group that meets via Zoom on Sunday nights. Some of those people are saying you should write a novel. I learned, guys, still a secret, we get along so much better when I do what I'm told. I'm just throwing it out there. So Elisa said you need to write a novel, and I said, I got this. You don't have to tell me twice.
Please don't believe him.
So,
Thank you.
so after being gently nudged to write a novel, I started collecting all my thoughts, getting all my ideas together, and I ran it by Elisa, basically an outline for Moral Fractions, some ideas and what this guy might look like and what the antagonist might look like. And she's like, Elisa reads book after, she belongs to book clubs and everything like that. And she's saying, this is really good. And I'm like, I can do this. All right. So I hired a writing coach. He lives outside of Houston, Texas. We meet via Zoom in Katy, Texas. And he took me on as a client. Now I'm an author. I have a writer. Come on. I made it. So he had asked me to send everything to him that I had, all my notes, all my ideas, all this timeline I had, this outline. And we met via Zoom one night, and his name is Dan, and he said, Rusty, I'm looking at everything that you sent me. There's a seat right here. I don't know if is that possible? Yours or someone coming back for that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
There's one here too.
There's one right up here.
I don't know whose pocketbook it is.
I know it's not mine. Sure. All right.
Your fingerprint.
So Dan says to me, we're via Zoom, and I'm sitting at my dining room table, and I'm all excited because I'm going to have a writer's coach, and he's going to make me feel so good about myself. And he said, Rusty, I'm going over everything. He said, what did you send me? I said, what you told me to. I sent you ideas. I sent you an outline. I sent you how I think the plot's going to develop. And he said, you sent me stuff happening. He didn't say stuff, but since it's being recorded. And he said, stuff happening is not a story. That was my first realization that I was in way over my head. And I went, Dan, and I went from here to, but the next hour and a half, I think it almost went 2 hours. Dan worked with me, and he explained to me about how to plot a story. See, I always wrote, and I do this with life, I fly by the seat of my pants. The previous 9 books that I wrote, I would sit down and just start writing. No outline, no idea, and they came about. So that's called a pantser in the writing world. There's plotters and pantsers. I was a pantser. Well, I found out that writing a novel, if you're a pantser, and Stephen King says he's a pantser. He doesn't plot anything, he just writes. I'm not Stephen King, I'm not even there yet. So in doing so, Dan said, here's what I'm going to do. There's a guy by the name of Blake Snyder back in the 1990s who researched the most well-known and the most highly successful movies and screenplays, Broadway shows, and looked and dissected them and saw that each one of them had similarities, and he called it the save the cat structure. That there's always a hero that saves the cat, and there are 15 beats in this, and they all work out, and sure enough, and he gives example after example. About 8 years ago, a woman by the name of Jessica Brody took that, morphed it into a writer's, and named it Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And it's a beat sheet. So I said, Dan, this is great, I got this. So I started making this beat sheet. And what I did is I took a trifold board, this is the exact same one, and I would make notes, sticky notes, and there's this typical 3-act structure. Act 1, Act 2 is divided into 2, Act 3, and then each one has different beats. And I started, and Dan told me, by the way, also, get other books and read up on other people who have other ideas on how to write a novel. And I thought, I got this. So I started putting this together. I color-coded it. Huh? I even measured it out. This is, as you can see, everything is perfect. Right? I have everything blocked out. Some beats have more than one scene. Some beats have just a single scene. But I got this, and I start writing. And I meet with Dan again, and Dan says, okay, what do you got? And I said, well, I'm writing this and this and this. And Dan said, did you get the other book that I told you to read? And I said, what do you mean? There's a man by the name of James Scott Bell. He's a best-selling crime author. He's also an editor and a publicist. And he says you write from the middle, that you find the midpoint and you get that down first. And then because if you have the midpoint, that's the turning point, you can write toward it and then you can write away from it. So I took everything that I wrote, crumpled it up, and started all over again. But this time I wrote from, hello there. This time I listened. I wrote from the middle. I wrote from the midpoint, and I wrote forward, and I wrote backward, and forward and backward, and I was feeling really good. But then I started doing something stupid. I figured I want to learn more about this. So then I started taking online courses about really how to write fiction, how to be a novelist and things like that. And I came upon an organization that's called Story Grid, and it's for writers, both seasoned and new authors, on what they say are the 5 commandments of storytelling. Every story must have the 5 commandments, it must meet these, and every scene must have them. So I took what I had and I went, so I went back and I started adhering to the 5 commandments of storytelling. Okay, I got this. I'm got this now. I found another course about the psychology of writing a novel. And this woman, her name is Abby Evans. I perseverated. I said a little anal retention. But she talked about the psychology of writing, and there is a science on why people will take a book and want to turn the page after you turn the page. And she came up with that you have to have your characters consistent. So the psychology, basically the personality trait. So I had to learn, and has anyone heard of Enneagrams? It's okay. So I studied Enneagrams, and the characters in Enneagram type 9 with the wing 1, if that means anything. That tells you how much I learned about this. And she said the reason you do that is, if I respond a certain way when things are going good, and we all have people in our lives that we know, even if we don't know them well, when something happens, we can almost expect the way they're going to respond. Well, if you're writing a book and the character responds one way in one chapter, and so I had the character, so now I had to go back and make sure that Vince Brown is responding in a certain way, his sister's responding in a certain way, and everything else. I got this now. Now, it took me 15 months to write this book to get it published. You have a little idea why. My beautiful bride came up with an idea. I'm like, I'm struggling. I can't see these characters. I can't see who they are, and I don't, so she said, why don't you get a photograph, get a picture of who, what did I do with that? Oh, it's there.
I'm Vanna without the camera.
She's so good.
Put that there. So watch this, you almost took out Sue's face. So, what I did was I used an AI generated tool, and I told this AI generated tool what each person was, and I kind of gave them the background of who they were. And this is our AI generated tool. So what I did is this is exactly what I had it in our living room, sitting on our mantle. When I was writing, I would sit there and have this so I could see who they are. Now, those of you who read the book, is that what you envision Vince Brown as that close? Not at all. What about Father Frank?
Wait a minute. Which one is Father Frank?
Father Frank.
So Carmen's at the bottom. This is Mike Brown, the dad. Audrey Brown, and in the middle, Evelina the Rook. So whether or not this is real to you, or real to me, it didn't matter for this reason. As you heard, I'm a clinical hypnotist. When I worked, I got into hypnosis because of the pain that the spinal cord tumor has caused me. I was eating pain medication like Skittles. And I was either in horrible pain if I didn't take my pain meds, or I wouldn't take my pain meds, but then I was in so much pain that I couldn't function. So I was either agortic or in so much pain. So Elisa saw an ad for hypnosis for pain management. I'm like, first of all, I'm a cop, I can't be hypnotized. And I don't want to quack like a duck, cluck like a chicken. So I said, no, I'm not going. Again, we get along so much better when I do what I'm told. And so after being dragged to my first hypnosis session, all they did was work on relaxation. And Elisa had timers in her phone for me to take certain meds. And that was the first day that she said, oh my God, did you take your 5 o'clock meds? And I didn't even think about it. The second session, I learned a control technique, how to turn down the pain, and that's why I became a hypnotist and a hypnosis instructor. In hypnosis, when I'm working with clients, I don't tell them, you're sitting in the Denby Annex at the colony office and you're in a chair. I say, imagine that place where you're comfortable, and imagine what that might look like to you. Go to that favorite, I could say, and imagine you're walking down the beach. What if someone had a near drowning incident and they don't like the water?
That's right.
So what I say is, go to that place that you find the most comfortable. And when you get it, just nod your head and let me know you're there. So what I wanted to do with the book, and my beta readers both praised me for this, and also beta readers are who gets the copy of the manuscript before it goes to the editor to tell you, are there any plot holes, or what's the character development, things like that. I wanted you, the reader, to decide what they look like. I wanted to give you just enough information so in your mind, you could decide what they look like for you. Because if I tell you that this is who they look like as a hypnotist using hypnotic language, and if that doesn't resonate with you, there's a really good chance you're not going to be interested in that character. So if you are upset that I was too vague with character development, that's the reason I did that, is I wanted you to develop in your own minds what each character looked like. For me, this is who I needed them to look like so I could write towards that. Does that make sense? And again, and so, by the way, here's the 5 commandments. Then I would, for each scene, there's an inciting incident, a turning point, an unexpected event, a climax. I would actually use the same kind of sticky notes as I was writing to make sure I hit the 5 commandments of storytelling. So this is what it was a lot of work. Go ahead.
I think when you, I don't know, how many of you when you thought about Evelyn, you thought she was really not attractive?
Yeah. Frail.
Yeah.
Frail.
But I think when we had the conversation about her, I felt, I guess I shared my thoughts with her, that I thought she had to be somewhat attractive for her to be able to negotiate or navigate all the different things that she did. That if she really looked haggard, that people wouldn't be paying attention to her, she would become invisible, so that if she was an attractive woman, she could have been heavy spoken, which she was, but she could still be attractive, she could lean her way in and out. So that's why she's more attractive than I think you would have
Thought expected her to be. So, but for me to write this, so what I learned is that I didn't know, my dad would say something from Shinola about writing a novel, but what I learned along the way is what I want to share with you. Here's what I want to share with you. Anything that's not breathing right now, take a look around us. Everything here, below you, beneath you, above you, to the side, every single thing here was first someone's idea. It was an idea in someone's imagination. Everything we see, other than those of us who are breathing and maybe talking right now, everything here was first an idea, was first an imagination. Someone used the creative part of their mind to first develop everything that's here. And what I learned was this. We watch our twin grandchildren, they turn 3 in April, 3 days a week. We play games with them. We encourage them to use their creativity, to use, and they play games, they play firefighter. And there's a cat stuck in a tree, and they get on their bikes from Setauket Trail, and they ride their bikes to the firehouse, and they take turns, they're boy and girl, who can drive and who can use the siren, and they go, and then they put the ladder up on the tree, and they climb the ladder, and they save the kitty, and all the crowd's clapping, and you're my hero. We play games with them, we make force, we encourage them to use their imagination. Something happens to all of us. We do it to our own kids, it's happened to us. It's just your imagination. Look, it's time to start getting real. And there comes a point when we stop using our imagination as if it's something, it's wrong, right? Come on, you get real. So, quit being a daydreamer. And we kind of put the creative part of our mind, we set it aside. This showed me how important it is to retain that. So please, if I'm going to ask anything from you, that creative part of your mind, it's not gone. But have fun with it. I had more fun writing this book than, not our honeymoon, but I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun writing this book because I was able to just finally just let go and I didn't have to be that retired cop. I didn't have to be that paramedic. I didn't have to be that sick person who's in pain. I could just be free. And that really was the biggest lesson I took away from this. We were talking about marketing before this all started. I hire people to do marketing. I can't do marketing, if not for my wife and maybe my new marketing director. I can't market myself. So I hire marketing people, and they're going to hate to hear this, especially since it's being recorded. I didn't write this book, nor have I written any of the 9 previous books, with the hope of selling books, with hope of making sales. I wrote it to leave a legacy. My grandparents, I had an uncle I never met who died in the death march of Bataan. It was my mom's brother. Had my grandparents and my mom and my aunts and uncles never shared stories, I would never know about Uncle Fred. Our kids, my grandkids, hopefully their kids, and if there's libraries 50, 60 years from now, they'll know a little bit about GPA. That's who I'm, GPA and GMA. they'll know a little bit about me by what I leave behind. And I would share this with you. We all have a story. Everyone in this room, whether you agree with me or not, I'm telling you right now, you have a story that needs to be shared. It doesn't mean it has to be put between covers of a book, but you have a story that's going to help someone. You have a story that's going to ignite someone's passion, maybe their imagination, their creativity. Maybe it's going to help them feel better about something. Maybe it's a how-to book. Maybe it's how to work construction and how to frame a house. You know something, and to not share that is not, history is what we've done. Our legacy is so much deeper. So I would share this with you. Please share your stories. This opened up, again, it's one of those things that I learned about me, about being able to share who I am and share stories. So let me share this with you, and if I start crying, I'm not going to apologize. In the book, there was a scene where Vince Brown was coming back on an airplane with his dad. And then they land, and you learn that Vince's dad, Michael Brown, Vince never heard his dad say, "I love you." My brother and I never heard my dad say, "I love you." I never told my dad I loved him. We knew he loved us. It was just something that was never said in our house. I told my dad I loved him when Rich Lechner closed the lid to his casket on Thanksgiving weekend morning, 1985. Writing that scene, it was tough. When I told you about how writing can be healing, I didn't know that scene was even going to be in the book until I just started writing. And when it came out, it brought a lot of emotion, a lot of trauma. I know my dad loved me, but now I'm going to make damn sure that my kids hear that I love them. And they're going to hear it every day. I don't care if they're sick and tired of hearing it. They're going to hear it until I don't have a voice. So these are some of the things that I learned about writing. One last thing. I got it. This, even if you're not from Medford Lakes, this should be familiar to most of you, this scene, this location. Oh, Sherry, I know you know where this is. Okay? Okay, I know you know where this is.
Too much, yeah.
Okay? Anyone? This is Beach 4. This is Beach 4. I would say 1/3. This is the pine tree that I sat under. This is my laptop. I would say 1/3 of this book was written under this pine tree in Medford Lakes. And you can see this was obviously after rain. You can see that there's some rain marks. Now, why did I share that with you? In the book, there's a chapter called 1 Square Mile of Heaven. I had to include Medford Lakes. I had to include the police officer who kicked my butt and saved my life more often than I can even thank him for. The cop who I said growing up, if I ever become a cop, I want to be like him. And that's why the chief's name is who it is. He was my mentor as a cop and as a human. But there was something about this community, and Elise and I, we've talked about this before this group. I'm not telling you anything that I haven't shared with Elise in private. When we moved back to Medford Lakes, I've written, this is my 10th book. 8 of those were written since 2000, when we moved back to Medford Lakes. There was something so unique about this community, about the people in this community, that it's intangible and it's hard to explain. But to be able to write a 100,000-word book, 1/3 of it sitting at a beach. And what I did is I went back, and the reason I took that picture is Ginny and I are part of a writers group, and it's a very active Facebook group as well. And I uploaded this picture to the group and talked about it. Who would like to read to the, anyone? Mike, thank you.
Sure.
This picture is this not blown up. Another way to say that is this picture blown up. But this is a screenshot I took of the Facebook post that I shared. And will you just make sure the date and the date that I shared it?
June 27th, 2024.
Go ahead.
Low 80s plus low humidity plus a small quiet beach equals just the right atmosphere to spark creative writing. My novel is set in the cold of a January in Atlantic City, New Jersey, but I think I could still use this time to allow my mind to wander and let those unconscious thoughts flow, swim out of my mind. Happy writing, everyone.
1 year ago today. 1 year ago today. Believe in coincidence? 1 year ago today, I uploaded that to the Facebook group. So I shared a year ago with a Facebook group that people from all over the world, from Thailand, from the UK, from Australia, we meet via Zoom on Sunday nights, know how special this community is. It's this community that gave me the guts, maybe a little lower than the guts, to write this book. So I want to thank all of you for unknowingly, and I know you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I don't even know who you are. This community is made special because everyone in it. It's the reason that we wanted to move back to St. Haley that has allowed me to do this, and I owe this book to especially everyone here for coming out. This community, if not for you, this book doesn't exist. So they are the lessons that I've learned about the book. If you want to know, if anyone has any questions, I can talk about some of the characters. Did I miss anything? Okay, see? I keep checking, guys.